Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Red Circle, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, also on Spotify and the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Also, check us out on fivereasonsports.com. Make sure you spell that out. We have all the content there without a paywall like the newspapers have. And check out Playback. We're going to be on Playback on Saturday. We'll post it on the Five Reasons Twitter feed. We'll be there starting at about 3:30 for Heat Knicks Game 3. As long as you are connected to a TV provider, it's free. And you can come on and chat with us, hang out with us. We'll have a full crew of hosts from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. That includes our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. Check them out at allproconstructionbuilders.com or on Instagram at All Pro Construction Builders. Based in Miami, Danny and his team, they will get you the impact windows and doors that you need to protect yourself from the elements here in South Florida, including the hurricanes. And, well, not the Miami Hurricanes, but you know the ones that come around August and September, all the named storms. And they can do the additions and renovations, too, so they can make your whole place look nice. Don't wait until you got to find shutters a minute before, like, Hurricane Jessica is coming or something like that in September. Make sure that you get your hurricane windows and doors now. Mention Five Reasons. You get a 10% discount. Again, Danny and his team will take care of you. So check them out at allproconstructionbuilders.com. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and the Five Reasons Sports. I do want to mention for All Pro Construction Builders, you can reach out to Danny directly. That's at 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. And they service the entire area all the way down to Monroe County. We're going to talk Jimmy today. Alex and I were at practice. Jimmy was not available. In fact, we didn't even see him when we came in. He and Kyle Lowry were already gone. That tends to happen. And so all we were able to get was an update from Eric Spoelstra, which was not an update, that he would give us an update 2:15 on Saturday. But if you've been following Jimmy Butler on Instagram and following the late night workouts at the arena, and if you've been talking to people around Jimmy, which maybe you haven't, but we have, he's going to play on Saturday. He was very close to playing in game 2, and they held him out. As Eric Spoelstra said, they just kind of ran out of time. I also think that some of the other factors involved here, you'd gotten the split in New York. You had 4 days off coming up. It didn't make sense to push him out there, and the Heat almost won that game without him. They had sort of a role player masterclass, but they just couldn't finish it, in part because officiating got in the way. And I don't usually blame officiating, but that was a disaster class. And so hopefully that particular officiating crew, or at least lead official for the Heat's sake, won't be back around in this series. But Jimmy Butler will be. And so we wanted to put this into some kind of context, because it's one thing to say Jimmy's on a good run. It's another to say he may be potentially on the best playoff run in Miami Heat history. When you're looking at the types of players that have played for this organization. Obviously, you're starting with Dwyane Wade and LeBron James, but also Chris Bosh, also Shaquille O'Neal, even if it was sort of late mid-career Shaquille O'Neal. And you had all the other Hall of Famers who've come through, okay, even though they were not in their prime. Guys like Gary Payton, Ray Allen. Now you've got potential Hall of Famers like Kyle Lowry and Kevin Love. And also, of course, Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, 2 more Hall of Famers. A lot of Hall of Famers have played for this organization, and a lot of other really good players like an Eddie Jones, like a Jamal Mashburn, etc. And yet what Jimmy is doing is kind of unprecedented. And you know, this comes with the fact that Dwyane Wade had arguably the best finals performance we've ever seen, at least to that point, averaging 34.7 in the finals. And LeBron James had one of the best seasons we've ever seen, 2012, 2013, which finished with a championship. But Alex, as you went through some of the numbers here and what Jimmy's done, and it's 6-game sample size, but it's a build on what he's done in the postseason, or at least 2 of the 3 previous postseasons with Miami, not the Bryn Forbes series. And you put it into context, like, this is really unprecedented what he's done.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's felt every bit as spectacular as it's looked, and the stats back all of that up. But I was like kind of flabbergasted looking through some of these stats. Shout out Basketball Reference and Stat Head. Makes it really easy for me to just kind of compare all these different playoff seasons here. I ended up kind of going a little bit crazy with it. So I pulled up 2 different playoffs for Jimmy, LeBron, and Dwyane to try to kind of make it fair. Like they're the 2 best playoff runs for each player. And, just for one thing, right? This is not everything that matters. But when you look at per 100 possessions, so adjusting for pace, which matters a lot when comparing between different eras, of course. When you look at points per 100 possessions, Jimmy's playoffs so far, through 6 games is way higher, way higher than anything else we've seen from a Heat player in the playoffs before. So right now it's at just under 45 points per 100 possessions. Second place is LeBron in 2012 with just under 39 points. So that's about 6 points per 100 possessions of a gap there between first and second place. Obviously, it's only been 6 games. It's not a full playoff run like these other seasons that we're comparing here. But even then, despite that, we know what happened in the first round. They faced the Milwaukee Bucks. So it's not like they got through, some easy opponent that's kind of affecting these stats. He did it against top tier competition. That's just one thing, right? You look at the fact that all these playoff runs here, he has the highest usage at 33.5 and the lowest turnovers per 100 possessions from all of these playoff runs. Actually, first and second when you look at lowest turnovers. What he's doing right now, I think it's just incredible. I didn't think that. I thought it was. I'm kind of stumbling all over my words here, and I think that's kind of where Jimmy's left me. I thought it was going to be a thing where we look at the numbers and it's like, wow, Jimmy's on par with everybody here. But no, it's like, wow, what he's doing so far, it's not just outdoing everything he's done before. He's kind of outdoing by some of these numbers what LeBron and Dwyane have done. Now, obviously, he hasn't, won the championship yet, but just going through some of these, LeBron, where he's got Jimmy beat is the rebounding, and I think the higher assist percentage. LeBron's got the 2 highest there. Jimmy with the lowest turnover stuff to me is really, really impressive just because you kind of think of LeBron and Dwyane as these elite all-time passers, and Jimmy does not get that at all. And we know that he's not the same level of passer as LeBron and Dwyane when it comes to actual passing ability, but when it comes to being a floor general playmaker, he turns over the ball. Those guys. So I just think the way that he plays, which is maybe a little bit more conservative as a passer, really works out for him. It ends up being huge. When you go at, I know I'm just kind of rambling here. I'm just comparing some of these seasons. When you go through like win shares per 48, Jimmy has the highest one, but it was actually last year's playoff run. And then LeBron in 12 is second, and this year's Jimmy playoff run is third. What he's doing right now is kind of unbelievable. Let's see. He's also got the highest steals percentage, tied with Dwyane's 06 run. I'm trying to just communicate,
Which is the other Dwyane run that you're looking at? You're looking at 06.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I should have said that from the top. This is all very messy. But, okay, so basically I grabbed the last 2 Jimmy playoff runs, so this year and last year. For Dwyane, I grabbed 06 and 2011. And for LeBron, 12 and 13.
Okay.
And
so when Dwyane, just to put this into some context, so when Dwyane had help, right? So because you could also look at 09 and 10, but there was one series each time, and he had very little help on those 2 teams and got eliminated in the first round. That was Atlanta and Boston. Just to pivot on this a little bit, because I do think the help matters here, because I'm curious how we contextualize that. Because in one way, people will say, okay, well, Jimmy has to do a lot of this because unlike even Dwyane in 11, okay, Dwyane had LeBron with him, and LeBron was pretty damn good until the finals, right? Okay, and because Dwyane, if you remember Dwyane's 2011, the Eastern Conference Finals against Chicago, he was not good. He was their 3rd best player. Bosh was better than him in that series, and Dwyane really struggled in Chicago. LeBron was by far their best player in the Chicago series. Dwyane was better in the finals. We know that. And 06 is interesting because it was the year before that Shaq was out for the first part of that run. But in 06, Shaq, at least from a scoring perspective, might as well have been out because he wasn't really a featured option for the Heat. He was more of a decoy, but he was an important decoy. And obviously a decoy, Greg, that Avery Johnson focused too much on. But I guess when we put this into some context, we kind of like, okay, in some ways, Jimmy's numbers are padded somewhat because he does not have Tyler with him. Bam has not made a significant impact. But then what Alex is saying is important here too. He didn't get the benefit in this playoff run of facing a weak first round opponent, like LeBron faced the Milwaukee team that LeBron faced in the first round. I mean, Brandon Jennings was their best player. Okay.
Yeah. Or the Bobcats.
Not Giannis Antetokounmpo and Drew Holiday. So, I mean, Jimmy hasn't caught a break. There's like no warm-up series here. And even Dwyane's 06, that Chicago team they played in the first round, which pushed them to 2-2, was okay, but not at the level of this Milwaukee team, which won 58 games and had championship aspirations. And you mentioned also, so you're not looking at 05 with Dwyane. You're looking at because he got hurt in that one. And in 11, they've opened with Philadelphia, right? That was Drew Holiday.
Also Drew Holiday, Evan Turner, Iguodala.
Iguodala, right? Exactly. That and Lou Williams. So how do we put that into context, Greg?
For me, a big part of this has to do with advancing. Because I think back to those Dwyane Wade years where he had less help, right? And he had some pretty robust stat lines. I think like the Celtics series is one that I remember. He probably averaged over 30 in that series. To that point though, like when you don't advance, I feel like that puts a cap on where you can end up in the hearts and minds of Heat fans in the rankings that we try to do when we analyze and try to quantify where these things stand. To me, the big part of it is the giant slayer, thing that they did with Milwaukee. And now the chance that they could, win this series against New York and end up in the conference finals. That's where I think it edges out some of the other runs. And it's why Dwyane's 06 run to me is more important than some of those other ones, obviously, because you got to close the deal and no one's ever going to, I think, put Jimmy in a tier ahead of LeBron or Dwyane unless he were to win a championship. That's like, you can't even go there conceptually until he wins a championship, I feel like. But just it puts it in perspective. And if he continues down this track and he continues to play like this in the Heat advance, I feel like even if you don't make the finals, it'll be remembered, but it's not going to measure up to Dwyane or LeBron because the title means a lot. I mean, a lot of what we focus on when we think back to these series, like you mentioned, Shaq not being a scorer, but I think he had 30 and 20 in the second round against Chicago in that run. But against Dallas, he wasn't a scorer. So it's weird the way that like it's such an adventure the further you go into a playoff run. And so I think that's where we need to give Jimmy a little more time.
And when you go back to say Tim and Zoe, their runs were truncated by losing in the first round, even though Timmy had the 38 points to advance in the first year, and Zoe had some great numbers. I think the other thing is we sort of again put this into context, which is what we're trying to do here, is there's no Heat player other than Jimmy that I could find whose numbers go up career-wise in the playoffs. Like not even Dwyane's, okay? Not even Dwyane's, not even Bron's. And certainly there are some guys historically, Zoe's tended to go down a little bit. And then there are others who were really good players for the Heat, and they went down a lot. Eddie Jones and Jamal Mashburn are the two that come to mind. And then there are others who were just complete flops in the playoffs, like Jermaine O'Neal. Okay, so there's different levels to this. There's going to be an interesting conversation as we go forward about where Bam fits in that. Is he ultimately going to be in the Eddie Jones, Jamal Mashburn camp where he's really good in the regular season, but it slips a little in the playoffs? Or does he maintain a level in the postseason as kind of Tim Hardaway did? There's levels to this, and we always talk about the playoffs tell. I guess, Alex, the thing about it, when we look at Jimmy historically, a lot of this is now you're going to have a 4-year sample, right? And it's a weird sample because of COVID and because of the bubble and because of players who've come in and out. But LeBron had a 4-year sample. So at least there's going to be apples to apples to compare there. But most are going to say, well, LeBron's team got to the finals 4 years and won 2 titles. So, again, Jimmy doesn't have the help that LeBron had. He doesn't have Dwyane with him. He doesn't have Chris Bosh with him. He doesn't even have their role players were guys like Ray Allen and Shane Battier, and Udonis Haslem, reasonably close to his prime. And Mike Miller couldn't even get on the court a lot of the time, whereas the Heat are playing role guys who were UDFAs. But I'll just put it this way. If Jimmy can get to a second finals in 4 years, plus an Eastern Conference Finals where he was one shot away from making the finals, isn't that as impressive as what LeBron did in 4 years?
Man, you're hitting me with the tough questions, man. Staying on brand. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's as impressive. I think what Leif is saying is true. You got to close out, and that's why we got to give them more time. Not that they're going to win a championship this season. I still don't think that's going to happen. But who knows, right? We didn't think we were going to be here right now. Definitely didn't think that we'd be, feeling good about them possibly.
But Alex, isn't that part of the story here, though? The fact that we didn't feel we were going to be here right now.
That's what makes it special.
Right? Okay. And now, we believe, I think all three of us think they're going to beat the Knicks in this. I think they're going to beat the Knicks in this series, barring another significant injury. Okay. They can't lose anybody else. They can't lose. At this point, you can't lose Caleb Martin. You lose anybody else.
Caleb, Gabe, all of those guys. That would be a devastating type of loss right now.
You can't lose one of them. Okay. But provided that, and then we saw in the last game, Caleb and Max both said they're going to play in the next game. Both of them got hurt in the last game. You don't know what's going to happen here before this and the end of the series. But I mean, if they win this series, I mean, they're one series from the finals. Boston, Philly is tonight as we're speaking. Embiid hasn't been himself yet. Miami feels they can compete with Boston because they always have, and we all believe they can compete with Philadelphia. That's who we thought that would be their targeted matchup to start the playoffs. Like it's not crazy at this point. But it was crazy, and the only reason it's not crazy is because of Jimmy Butler. And so that's right.
But think about it this way. This is, and the more you unpack this, I think we can get to the bottom of a lot of the expectations are the big thing, right? Because LeBron came to Miami, the big three formed, and honestly, at that time when he left back to Cleveland, a lot of people considered, now in retrospect, I have a different opinion, but many other people at that time were saying that maybe they underachieved a bit. 4 finals was great, but they probably should have won 3, maybe even 4 titles. That, that was kind of the thought. Whereas with Jimmy, the bubble run in 2020, completely unexpected. So you didn't have that expectation level. This run, completely unexpected, and you didn't have that expectation level. So then when you see him drag a team that you had no expectations for, you already are thinking about those guys in a lower level than you were the surrounding players for any of LeBron's games here. And so then it's a thing where you're like, wow, Jimmy Butler is really doing this and basically defying every level of logic that we could ever come up with. And so that's why it's so hard. It's like a conundrum to get to the bottom of it because you feel it's counterintuitive to put it in front of LeBron. But because of the expectation level, I think that some of it is you have no choice but to look at it and think gosh, is this really that level? And I think it is.
It's like grading on a curve almost, right?
Correct.
Where it's like we didn't see any of this coming, and I completely get where you're going. The fact that it's LeBron, Dwyane, and championship they brought is the only thing that really separates it, because the level of play you can argue has been better, and that is insane. I'm not going to say it has been all the way because again, he hasn't closed out, but when you just look at the individual play, it's really hard not to say it's been just as good, if not better. And again, just a couple of more things that stood out to me here. I mentioned it in the chat. So Jimmy, so far through these 6 games that he's played in these playoffs, is shooting just under 63% from 2. LeBron's best in Miami from 2 was 55. That is an 8 percentage difference. Dwayne's best in Miami shooting from 2 was 52, 11% difference. It's insane. And then you look at, just some other advanced stats here. Not that one is going to tell you all, but if you're kind of grouping them all together and they're telling you similar things, you have Jimmy's playoff so far is the best PER in Heat history. He has the best true shooting percentage in Heat history by far. Second place is last year's playoff run, which he's outdoing by 6 percentage points in true shooting right now through these 6 games. And then, I already mentioned before, he has the highest win shares per 48 with this run. I mean, with last year's run. I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand how he's doing this without another superstar teammate. No shots to Bam Adebayo whatsoever, but he's doing this without somebody else who most people would consider to be his peer. And I don't think that takes away from anything, because it should be making things harder for him. And he's had, Bam and Goran, good teammates. You can't compare him to what Dwyane and LeBron had when they were here. And it's just, I don't even know how to process this. Like, how is he outdoing these guys by such a huge margin? I understand it's only been 6 games, but what is happening right now? Maybe you're right. Maybe, grading on a curve, this might be more impressive, because absolutely nobody saw this coming. When you talk about this 4-year run, excluding 2021, of course, like all 3 of these, right, that we're talking about, where he's been just absolutely special, out of this world, nobody saw it coming. And I think that's kind of the point with Jimmy. Nobody saw it coming, and he's outperforming these dudes. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
Well, look, here's the thing. He didn't get a Dame Lillard yet. He didn't get a Donovan Mitchell. There's no cavalry who's come to help him. I mean, since last offseason, all the Heat have really done since he's come is play around the margins, really. And this past offseason, they didn't even do that. They took one of his starters that he wanted to keep was taken away. Not that the Heat made the wrong decision there, because I still believe that not paying PJ Tucker was the right decision. But essentially, all they've done is just try to increase the upside of UDFAs. I mean, that's really what they've. And then this offseason, we heard a lot about Bam carrying more of the load, and it happened for 2/3 of the season, and it stopped happening. And now he doesn't even have Tyler Hero, who was the other guy who could create any kind of offense beyond him. So I think here's the thing about it, and after the sponsors here, we'll close the loop on this. But people may discredit this by saying, well, he's putting up numbers because nobody else can. But the efficiency numbers belie all of that, because it's not like he's chucking. I mean, like Alex said, he's shooting under 63% from 2 in these playoffs. And he faced a defensive team that, although it was not the defensive team it was early in the year, the Bucks were considered to be an elite defensive team who have given him trouble in the past. So it is kind of insanity. Now, the only thing to hold against him at this stage is 6-game sample size, okay? But as you look forward here in the playoffs, there's this dichotomy, okay? And this is always what's kind of gotten me about this, is that he's going to be held accountable. Well, not accountable, but he will not be given the credit that LeBron and Dwyane will get for finishing the deal when that has nothing to do with him. You understand what I'm saying? Like that's not a reason to discredit him. It will be used that way in debates. Well, they didn't make the finals. He didn't carry them to the finals. Okay, but LeBron and Dwyane had help. Like in all of those,
and they had LeBron and Dwyane.
Right, they had LeBron and Dwyane. Or in Dwyane's case, you had Shaq, who was one of the greatest decoys in NBA history, even at that stage. And even look at the rest of that 06 team. I mean, again, look at the role players on those teams. Okay, James Posey, Antoine Walker, who had been an All-Star, Jason Williams, who had been a top-level point guard for a while before he came, and even though he was towards the end of his career, Gary Payton. Okay, look. Okay, so I guess you're saying Jimmy got Kevin Love towards the end of his career. So is he the Gary Payton or Ray Allen in this example? I don't know that he has. I don't know that Kevin, as well as he's played recently, has as much left as Ray did.
If they win it all, he can be.
I guess he could be, but you also had Shane, and you had guys like James Jones who couldn't get off the bench. James Jones would play ahead of Duncan Robinson on this team. Okay, most likely. Okay, so. It's just kind of remarkable what Jimmy's doing. I do want to mention a couple of the sponsors here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We always mention Prize Picks. That's our fantasy sponsor. Use the code 5 FIVE. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. Want to be clear on this. It's a match. We have a lot of people who are signing up. They're not depositing. They're not going to give you the money unless you deposit some money, but it's still a pretty damn good deal. If you put down $20, they're going to give you $20. There's no rollovers. It's your money to play with right away. You put down $100, they're going to give you $100. And again, you can play more than the NBA. So you can pair players from different sports, different teams. They've got everything from MLS to NHL to MLB to MMA. It's all on there in addition to the NFL props for the season. Go to Prize Picks, download it from the Google Play Store, Apple App Store. Go to prizepicks.com. I can tell you of all of daily fantasy, this is the easiest one to use by far. Okay, and that's why we promote it here at the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, Better Edge. Go to Better Edge. BetterEdge.com. There you can use the code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN. You get $20 to play. What's different about this from other gambling sites is that first thing, it's legal in 44 states, including the state of Florida. It's actually legal in every NBA city except Salt Lake, but it's Salt Lake. Go to BetterEdge.com. Use the code 5RSN. You get $20 to play. The reason it's legal is you're betting against others who use it. It's like betting against your friends, okay, or new friends. You're not betting against the app or some bookie or something like that, and you will get paid right away. So go to BetterEdge.com. Use the code 5RSN. Greg, you make a good point here in the chat, and I agree with it. Jimmy, we talk about moments, okay? And this is kind of where we'll close the loop on this. And when you think of Dwyane, I mean, look, it's going to be hard to ever get past. First thing, it was the Heat's first, okay? And it was done with a homegrown star. Like Dwyane was Chicago's, but he was ours, okay? We were seeing him develop in front of our eyes. He's the one Shaq wanted to still be here when he came, etc. They're down 2-0. First thing, they got past Detroit, which at the time was the team that you had to get past, right? And Dwyane had a hell of a lot to do with that. But again, he got help from Jay Will in Game 7. But then you look at or Game 6, I guess it was that year. But then you look at what he did in the finals. You're down 2-0. You're down 15. We ain't going out like this. And he just set off a bomb, okay, on the NBA. Okay, no, I mean, look at the guys that age don't do that as the lead guy. Okay. So he had so many moments, right? And LeBron had plenty of moments during playoff runs. Okay. And, the Indiana series in 12 with Bosh out, obviously Game 6 in Boston in 12. It's funny. 12 was actually, 13 was his best season, 12-13, but 11-12 was his best playoff run. And then even in 13-14, LeBron dragged them to the finals that year because Dwyane was not himself and Bosh was inconsistent, and the sporting cast had cratered a little bit by 13-14. But Jimmy's got the moments now. Like Jimmy, I mean, you go back to last year and that Game 6 in Boston, which statistically was comparable to LeBron's, okay? But then you look at this year and the two games in Milwaukee in particular, and even what he did in Game 1 against New York. There's just moments everywhere. And he's also doing it against high-profile teams. Like, it's going to get remembered what he does against the Knicks. He got a coach fired already.
Beating the Bucks that will be remembered differently. You're totally right.
And then if you get through this series and into the next series, you're facing either Boston, which is always going to remembered, or he's going to beat his own. If he gets to the finals, he's got to go through his old team in Philadelphia, the one Tobias Harris over me. Right? And then I don't know who's going to be waiting on the other side. If you got that far, it could be Denver. It could be the Lakers. It doesn't look like it's going to be Phoenix. I guess it could be Curry on the other side. But the moments are there for him. Like, I guess the thing is, I don't know that I can declare this the greatest ever because it's only 6 games. But he has set himself up for it.
Yep. And here's the last thing I'll say on this topic for today is that if they actually were to make it to the finals, I won't even say win the finals, but if they make the finals, that is going to come jam-packed with a ton more moments, to your point. And there's going to be other guys who step up. Jimmy will continue to have more moments. And so that's the part of this we don't know, the unknown. And so that's the fun part to see unfold. It's just he's got to get those games. And when you go look at those playoff stats and all the years that Alex was pulling the data for, you're talking 16 games, 17 games, 19 games, whatever it may be, not 6. And so that's where the difference is. But it's going to be exciting to watch him get this done.
And Alex, I guess Heat fans want to see Bam step up. Obviously, we were there today, and Bam, I think, said a truth, which is that he's being guarded differently this year, and that's people adjusted to his offensive game. He's seeing more bodies in the paint. So I kind of feel like for Jimmy to get to where he wants to go, Bam has to get back to the level that he was first 2/3 of the season. But if he doesn't, and Jimmy drags them there anyway, it's even more significant. I mean, when's the last time we saw a one-man show lead a team to the finals?
That's true. That's not something that you see anymore. It's always the best players. I mean, I guess 2018.
Iverson did it.
Oh, yeah. That's true. That's
Yeah,
before my time.
2011, and he won them the one game in that series by himself. But really, it doesn't. I mean, when
2018 LeBron was the other one that came up to my head with that Cavs team that was just kind
yes.
of terrible, that couldn't defend and had a bunch of
Well,
old
and
dudes.
15 LeBron, but see, he didn't drag them to the finals by himself, but then Love and Kyrie got hurt. So he had to do it all himself, and he was playing out there with Matthew Dellavedova as his most reliable sidekick. But you're right, to get to the finals, the Toronto team with Kawhi had Siakam
That's a great
and
team. They had a lot of good players.
Lowry, like closer to his prime. Like last year's Golden State team, like Curry didn't drag them there by himself. I mean, Clay wasn't Clay, but Draymond is probably a Hall of Famer.
Is it just LeBron then? Like, I mean, you guys mentioned AI. That's a pretty good one. I wasn't watching during the 2001 playoffs, but as far as LeBron 2007,
2011. I'm sorry, 2001. Yeah.
LeBron 07 and LeBron 2018, I think, are the ones that come up in my head. Like, nobody even close to him. I guess 2018, he still had Kevin Love, but we know how bad that team was.
None of those Spurs teams. None of them.
No, this is none of
the Warriors teams.
Either a bunch of these role guys for the Heat are about to create a bunch more moments that they'll be remembered by, or Jimmy, if he were to get this done, it's going to just be inherent that he does a bunch of other cool stuff for us to watch. So that's like the fun part of this, is that if he were to continue on, get 6, 7, 8 more games in this run,
could we argue that 2020 might be the closest thing to somebody dragging a team to the finals by himself? Or we're going to give Dragic so much credit there that
who did you say?
The 2020 Heat.
Oh, but Tyler had a series. Guys were shooting.
No, but Bam and Goran really pulled their weight in 2020. Like, they each had a series where they were the best, where they were the highest scorer or whatever.
I mean, Bam pulled his weight more in 2020 than he has this postseason. Isn't that sort of the dirty little secret here? At least offensively.
Well, if you're comparing to Jimmy, then it was like, I was actually looking through some of those series just kind of individually recently, and they were Jimmy and Bam kind of, when you just talk about points, right? Again, not everything that matters, but it was really close. You know what I mean? Whereas now it's Jimmy is up here and Bam is, kind of at half or less, at a fraction of what Jimmy's doing. And again, not to take shots at Bam, I still think he's a top 25 player, still incredibly invaluable. Anybody would love to have him on the team. But it really does just kind of make what Jimmy's done stand out. Because 2020, he had some incredible moments, but it really doesn't. I think even last year and this year have kind of outdone what he did in 2020. The Lakers stuff without Bam and Goran was incredible. That kind of stands on its own. Different context makes it even more impressive. But as a playoff run, last year and this year, I think, have already outdone it. And it's funny because, like, after that bubble run, that felt so improbable as it was, and you didn't think you're going to have, I think, those types of runs again where it's going to feel as improbable. This one's already been more improbable just because they're the 8 seed. Last year, they were an underrated 1 seed. I don't know how Jimmy keeps outdoing himself. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't. And now you're going to have a little bit of a fable with him coming back from an injury during a playoff series. And let's say he goes for 33 on, tomorrow, and they win. Then it just continues the legend. Yeah, may he rest in peace. It's a remarkable thing that we're watching. I just think it was worth to me putting it into some context here. Thanks to Greg. Thanks to Alex. Thanks to our sponsors, allproconstructionbuilders.com. Check them out. Reach out to Danny. He will take care of you. Mention 5 reasons, you get a 10% discount. Better Edge, use the code 5RSN and bet legally. And Prize Picks, use that code 5 FIVE and make sure you make your deposit. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.